Great, thank you, Kat. Hopefully you guys can hear me good. It's always some technical challenges in the beginning, but let's get started. So welcome to the webinar, and thank you so much for signing up from my part as well. Today our focus will really be on how to attract talent to the financial industry. My name is Jonna Sjövall, and I have had a great pleasure to engage with our customers on building their talent attraction and employer branding strategies for 6.5 years now. And I've also been very lucky to work with some of the big global banks and financial services companies over my years here and learn a lot in the process. So it's really exciting to take you through some of the global insights that we have. We will start off with how banks and financial services companies can be successful in embracing the disruptive industry setting to attract and retain critical talent now and in the future. And we will base our talent findings on a global overview consisting of talent from 36 countries where approximately 320,000 business and STEM students told us about their view on work life and the financial industry. Just as a reminder, breakdowns per market or region or female, male, or whatever group you're interested in are available, but that's not in the scope of today's webinar. So also if you have any specific questions on that, we will take them. And then we will follow up with you guys on a personal level afterwards. So let's get started then. Overall, digital disruption will really change the role and relevance of today's banks, and that's probably no news for you. Traditional revenue streams are being attacked by fintech newcomers. Banks need to convert their short-term advantage of infrastructure and customer data into services that solve emerging digital consumer frustrations. So you could say the traditional banking is sort of under attack, and it's really the moment of truth out there. And banks are really anticipating the digital disrupted future state of banking by creating new businesses within their existing structures that really adapt and collaborate to meet these challenges and make better use faster of their key source of competitive advantage, which is really the customer insight. And Accenture has been doing some really great research on this. However, according to Accenture, the industry will probably become desegregated and digital disrupted, resulting in loss of market share, revenue, and scale. And importantly, the margins would fall or banking services would be added incrementally to non-financial services offerings. So the outcome of digital banking is everything but clear. The future will be shaped by those who find a new way to grow and adapt through having the best players on board to do so. And that's sort of where the talent part will really fit into this as well. Share of new inflow revenue from digital sales will change remarkably within the next 3 years. And according to McKinsey, by 2018, digital disruption in banking is expected to reach its inflection point. The current economic environment has put retail banks firmly in the spotlight and has prompted banks to reconsider their activities. Current challenges include customers changing behavior. The customer is still the same, but how they behave is different. And obviously the impact of new technologies and the emergence of new competitors and new banking models overall. So especially retail banks, they need to take control of their customer relationship, to coordinate their multi-channel offerings, especially online and mobile banking, and really embrace mobile payments. And the commoditization of banking has irreversibly shifted the balance of power in the customer's favor. And this is something that will be really key when you attract and retain the most suitable talent to take you through this era. Overall, banks are losing control of the customer relationship and really need to understand the customer journey better to stay competitive. And the same really goes from a talent perspective. So what we see in terms of digital disruption trends is really that banks have become providers of basic goods and services that can be easily substituted by a competitor. Consumers are actively embracing the digital agenda by using new disruptive offerings and channels, and they are moving faster than the business model that an incumbent company is able to offer. And the race is now on to really become relevant to new consumer preferences. So again, the same point that the consumer is still the same, but the consumer is really behaving differently, and the consumer has really different needs these days. And the same goes for employer brands. Talent act differently, and need to be addressed differently if you really want to make an impact. And the trends are clear, both from a consumer and talent perspective. So 40% of internet traffic is from mobile devices, and it's exponentially growing. Talent goes mobile as well on a very fast pace. Internet penetration is in the leading European countries is well beyond 90% of the population, with US lagging behind with less than 80, but it's still growing. So more and more people come online all the time. 700 million consumers in APAC are using smartphones to access banking services, and the growth is exponential there too. And we really see the same trends for talent communication. So smartphones and devices are really key to consume content overall, and that also goes for any type of communication in terms of your employer brand. And today, less than 10% of the banking revenues come from disruptive digital technology offering. So we could say that the future is here. And there are some strategic choices, obviously, for banks in the digital age that you need to make. It's time to step up to the challenge and really start actively embracing the digital agenda and start integrating insight from customers, employees, and other stakeholders to defend the leading position and really build new competitive differentiators too. This will not be possible without new types of talent leading the way. So really finding the key people that you need to be able to embrace the change will really be key to compete already now, but especially in a couple of years. And obviously, multi-channel drive the customer experience forward and require that banks truly listen to what the consumer wants. And according to a study on consumer loyalty by Bain and Company, omnichannel customers' loyalty is 16 percentage points higher than that of digital-only customers. So the same goes for the employee and candidate experience. Go mobile, go digital, and think about all the touch points that you can have with talent. So the good thing is that the overall trust in the industry has increased according to the Edelman Trust Barometer. Nevertheless, we continue to find alarming trends today at the global macroeconomic level. So big institutions are working through costly legal outcomes coupled with new capital retention requirements brought on by greater regulation. And this is for you who are listening in, who work within the industry, is probably something that you hear a lot. Still, we expect the market to digest these changes and move ahead. More troubling are signs of fear and distrust coming not from institutional fragility, but from attacks by hackers, cyber terrorists, rogue players gaming the system to create unfair advantages. But it's still good that the overall trust has been growing, even though very slowly for several years. The growth of fintech can also not be ignored, especially not from a talent perspective. And research conducted by Citi in March this year stated that investments in private fintech companies increased 10 times in the past 5 years. And obviously, the financial institutions can take advantage of the disruptive nature of the role and culture of fintech that may spark innovation without being limited by the constraint of the financial institution's infrastructure and culture. So you could basically say it's easier for fintech companies because they're smaller and more focused. And banks' days are almost numbered in the traditional sense of banking. Fintech challengers are nipping at your heels, stripping away the most lucrative parts of the business, from loans and payments through to foreign exchange and even asset management. And it's only a matter of time before the old guard fall by the wayside and the market becomes more competitive, transparent, and innovative. And these three words, competitive, transparent, and innovative, is also something you really need to be on the talent side. And while most startup sectors have historically been dominated by the Western world, particularly Silicon Valley, the fintech boom of the last 5 years has had a very different geographic footprint than before, and also a very broad set of stakeholders. So in the case of fintech, particularly consumer-focused services, Asia's market dynamics and diverse population create a different set of opportunities, but also challenges than those faced by, for example, US-only fintech entrepreneurs. And a number of financial institutions are also opening up their infrastructure to startups and trying to make the best out of it and really cooperate on different matters. At the same time, the whole industry is going through disruption. And what can companies then do overall to match the speed of change? Firstly, really focus on discovery, establish a personal connection. So communicating the financial stability, listening the steps that you're taking in data security, highlighting the innovations that traditional banks are developing can actually make a difference. And obviously, mobile banking and electronic payments are a good example. The innovation stories really need to resonate with customers, and it's important to engage them. Secondly, to behave, acting with integrity and self-awareness, and really take sustainability into consideration. Be consistent in reporting and communication, and tell people how you're doing. This is a long-term, not a short-term strategy. And we will see later on how this also reflects the talent attraction piece in terms of both communication and strategy. Start with social listening, have a really well-communicated culture that's focused on your people and the communities where they live and work and serve. Companies that are listening to their customers will for sure gain the greatest advantage. And thirdly, really try to engage, listen, share information, improve products. Don't be afraid to acknowledge problems, but be sure to take steps to solve them. So both consumers and talent understands that it's not easy. They just want to know what's going on and they want to hear about what you're doing. And it's vital to communicate across all platforms and in every priority area. Operations, purpose, product and services, engagement, as well as integrity. And really strengthening collaborative approaches to data security and privacy, standing for consumer protection and making sure that you remain strong will really help moving forward. So at the same time, the tech industry overall is attracting talent like never before. And this is one of the changes we do see on the talent side. This is just an example of London School of Business. During the years 2007 to 2013, the percentage of MBA grads going into financial services dropped from 46% to 28%. While those going into tech tripled from 6% to 20% during the same period. And remember, this is London School of Business. With innovative, ethical talent more attracted to other industries, it might be difficult for the financial sector to compete and transform culturally if these guys don't want to join you. And in the war for top talent, from the best and brightest college graduates to really high potential senior executives, legacy firms, so traditional financial companies, are perceived to be old school, will probably have some difficulty competing with newer enterprises in the technology sector and really mission-driven firms with a compelling purpose because they're really good at talking about it. So it's really about finding the way to communicate the bigger purpose, but also on a personal level for talent. And to compete more effectively in the global marketplace, legacy companies must closely align their business strategies with talent strategies, both at the top of the organization and in the pipeline. And rather than following more usual practices of recruiting in pockets of certain functions, departments, or business lines, or by seeking one or two new players, banks and financial companies will have to develop talent strategies enterprise-wide that will really match where you're heading. And obviously going head-to-head with talent magnets like Google or Facebook isn't easy, but it's not impossible. It's more really talking about like what kind of challenging opportunities that you can offer that appeal to innovative, creative change agents that you will need for future success. So even with all these challenges, banks have a really compelling story to tell. And there's really few industries where the role of technology innovation is such a differentiator as it is in banking. And also the forecast for economic growth is strong, particularly in regions currently underserved by banking. So we really believe that there's great times ahead for those who really embrace and drive change. So if we wrap it up then, top talent will really be key to address everything that we talked about. And the recruitment challenges will really be around attracting professionals within risk management, data analytics, and even talent development, to name a few. And like many other perceived boring industries, banks and financial services simply don't have that strong employer branding strategies to attract, recruit, and retain the very best professionals when this change is ongoing. So traditionally, banks and financial services have been quite good at this, but now since the whole game is changing, they haven't been fast enough. And long known as traditional innovation for industry, financial institutions rarely tell an employer brand story in an authentic and engaging way. So there's for sure a lot of room to working on building your story. Let's then move on to the talent perspective more in detail. What we can see is really that almost 90% of global business students, but just over 4% of global STEM students even prefer a career in banking, financial services, and insurances. And this, of course, varies by country quite a lot, and we wanted to highlight a couple of the differences. Singapore is at the top for both business and STEM, so Singaporean students are most keen on a banking career compared to their counterparts in other countries. Japan has the lowest interest for both groups. For STEM students, it's really just a fraction. And as comparison, US is right in the middle for business, but lower than average for STEM. And it's quite interesting when we ask the students why and why not they are interested in certain industries, but also really what they prefer and what they would like to have in their career, both long and short term. And we're going to look into that. At the same time, all these fintech competitors, how are they then taking your talent? Fintech in particular holds high allure for students who would otherwise maybe end up in more traditional areas of the financial services sector. So we just looked at the part of the students that are even interested within the sector, and then a big part of those are really interested in fintech. And it's not just about the positive stereotypes of startup life, like jeans to work or football during lunch or having beers every day with your colleagues and eating pizza. It's really more about a clear value proposition, both for the product, but also as an employer. So what do we really want to achieve here together? And greater learning opportunities, less red tape, the chance to work on problems they really feel genuinely passionate about are some of the reasons cited by those who have ditched jobs in traditional financial institutions for a role in a more tech-savvy startup that's really focusing on financial technology. Preferred industries for students not interested in banking include engineering, manufacturing, energy, and software and computer services for STEM, and management consulting, media and advertising, and fashion and luxury for business. So they're also interested in a variety of industries, but there is potential to tell them more about what you stand for and what interesting work they could do in the banking sector. In addition, it's really hard to stand out. How are you different than your neighbor? That's probably one of the most typical and difficult questions that you can get, especially within this industry. And this is just an example of banks using almost exactly the same approach to their employer branding marketing, talking about a world of opportunities. How is that then different at Bank of America versus Citi versus someone else, even outside the industry? So what does it really mean? It's really important to think about that. What does it mean? What does your value proposition mean to talent in particular, and how does that fit within your business strategy moving forward? So talking about your approach to two things, A, the disruption, like really the industry change, as well as B, to talent will really be key. And it's important to think about three things. What is your place in society, and what is your story as an employer, especially now when things move forward? Secondly, how do you drive change, and how will you stay competitive as a business? It's very interesting to talent to understand that, and especially for the fintech firms, they are really good at talking about these 2 points as one. And thirdly, what kind of people will really thrive in your organization? Probably you're going through cultural change, organizational change, strategic change overall. So it's important to think about what types of people would really fit here, in addition to formal education, knowledge, and competence. And lastly, what do you do to make their employee experience top-notch? It's usually easier if you're a smaller company with a not too diverse workforce. Then it's usually easier to keep it together. For big companies going through change, it will be a different story, but it's really about making sure that you utilize all the employees so that they can spread your story too. So going then back to more in detail, what does talent really want then? And we will share some insights between talent who are interested in the industry and talent who are not, and also highlight some differences between business and STEM students. Students interested in the industry, they have nearly identical long-term career goals, and it's really no news. Most think of work-life balance as an issue important to professionals with young families or aging parents. Many of them have seen the toll work life has taken on their parents, as well as the ravages of the financial crisis on their parents' net worth. So these are really students and young professionals who simply don't want to wait for retirement to enjoy recreation, hobbies, and family, but they also really want to make a difference. So they are not sure if really all the working hours will pay off. But on the other hand, also no news, they think differently about the workplace. They are digital natives, accustomed to accessing social networks, email, education, and entertainment from anywhere, whether at work, on the bus, at school, or even in bed. And this is probably something that you guys realize too. We really start to keep our devices with us wherever we go. And this is the same logic that applies for customers of yours. They are still there. They just interact with you and everything else differently. And to bring them into the work environment and say, hey, here's a 6x6 square you're going to work in. Here is a desktop computer. Here's your phone. You come in at 8, you leave at 5. And between 10 and noon, that's when we really need to get creative. That doesn't really work for them. And they really want to make a difference with their work. And then interestingly, business talent not interested in the industry seem to have the same types of needs than the ones who are. So no big differences there. And then on the STEM side, we really see that to be dedicated to a cause or to serve a greater good and understand the purpose is more interested to the overall population, because it was only a little bit over 4% who were actually interested in the financial services. And then we can ask ourselves the question, what does this mean? Does it mean that they also do not believe that the industry can offer a higher purpose? Maybe. Or they would be curious to know if you would communicate about it more. What we also see is that business students interested in banking and financial services give a lot of emphasis on prestige and market success. And we see this as it ties back to the overall trust in the industry, but also into reputation as a whole. Is this player a trustworthy institution in our society? Are they responsible in their way of conducting business? How do they think about their role overall? How do they think it will change? What is their reputation? And these are questions that your prospective business talent ask themselves when considering a career, especially in banking. Business students not convinced about the industry, they tend to focus more on the way forward and the human side of the business, such as leadership and strategy, implying that they don't think the financial sector would be able to match their focus areas and deliver on expectations, both in terms of overall business clarity going forward, as well as from an employer and employer branding perspective. And the conclusion here is really that there's so much to do in terms of communicating what you're about and how you go about it to talent not yet interested in the sector. So really thinking about this from two different perspectives. How can we reinforce what we are, what we do, and what we stand for, and what we need to those who are already interested, versus how can we actually tap into the potential talent that are not interested in us at all? We really need to sell the industry first, and we also need to make sure that we somehow differentiate from our competitors. So STEM students then with interest in the industry, and remember it's less than 5% of the overall population, they tend to have similar preferences and value the same attraction drivers as the business students who want a financial career. The overall STEM population focuses more on innovation and inspiration. So they're thinking about who leads this company, how will they then drive the industry forward? How do they win their customers in the future and right now? And what new innovations will they bring to the table to be able to do that? And these questions are easier to answer when you have a very clear value proposition or you're a young, focused company, such as actually many of the fintech firms. And for traditional banks and big financial employers, the key will really be to bring it all together from a strategic perspective and think and rethink how you talk about yourself from a talent perspective, but also from a business perspective, explaining where you're heading. And when crafting the strategic workforce plan, everyone mentions tech talent, but also the profile of young talent who wants to be part of a big change within the industry and gets excited about that seems to be something that all the banks and financial companies want right now. And when being concrete about both investments and plans in terms of modernizing the banking era, in combination with stability and the muscle that usually the big banks can offer compared, for example, to fintech, there's for sure an opportunity to speak to a broader group of STEM talent in particular and really make them excited about what you have to offer. So a compelling story with a clear mission is appealing. You need to be clear on where you're going to be able to excite. Why are you here? Where do you come from? And where are you heading? And drill these questions down to the individual's perspective, like humanize the idea. This is also true for big, stable, and even like companies with real like strong DNA and a long history. There's a lot to learn from these smaller, more agile firms who are very focused. On the other hand, training and development is the number one most important job characteristic across borders for both business and STEM talent, regardless if they're interested in the industry or not. And on the contrary to popular belief, money matters, yes, but it doesn't matter to students considering a career in banking as much as training and development. So for students that are interested in banking, a stable income as well as good rewards is a given. Without the exponential opportunities of joining a fintech company, a startup on a mission, where you might have the opportunity to build something from the ground and even like be part of the company's financial success in terms of shares and so forth. And what more established firms can offer and should talk about is how you can offer a broad career path with multiple different options going forward after entering into the firm in one specific role. So this is for sure something that you can offer and the smaller tech firms cannot. Good development programs, investments in personal development, as well as certifications, especially for STEM students, will be a differentiator from the cool and hip tech firms. And another interesting trend is that job security is becoming increasingly important to students. Excellent professional training and development programs will be must-haves, though training and development programs 2.0 have been a tough problem to solve as it become a particularly thorny issue for banks, because what types of competencies do you really need to develop? That's basically the big question to answer. Reorganizations in the banking industry are changing the mix of employees inside banks. And obviously higher paid roles in management are shrinking while the ranks of analysts are growing, leading to more competition of fewer senior spots. So competence-based development opportunities will really be key, and not always going upwards, really looking broadly in terms of what are the interesting things I could do within this company. Banking-inclined students increasingly expect their first job to last 5 years or more, which is longer than we see on an average. And this is to a broader extent than other student groups for sure. And they somehow seem to seek stability in their careers, especially considering that the banking sector has undergone widespread restructuring and redundancies. And banking, however, is seen as less secure than before, mainly because of the change within the industry and the disruption everyone needs to cope with. However, that's also exciting for especially young talent. And it's also a matter of communication. How do you speak with talent on these matters? How do you speak to your employees, and how do you speak to prospective candidates? Students aiming for careers in financial services have somewhat traditional aspirations and expectations than those bound for other industries. Thus, developing talent attraction strategies based on what current employees or candidates already interested in the industry won't be enough, and it's sort of short-sighted. So going back to what we talked about earlier too, that you really need to broaden up the perspectives to make sure that you can also speak to those who don't show any interest in the industry right now. And in the coming years, we believe it will be critical for companies to attract promising students with the right mindset and aspirations. And banks' need for technology and digital talent won't be satisfied by the current pool of students already seeking a career in banking and financial services. And what's more, it's imperative that companies take a regional approach and match the messaging to both what's attractive, but more importantly, to the overall business position that you have on a specific market. And usually the trust and interest in you is really strong on the home market if you do things well, and that will reflect the overall employer brand too. And for emerging markets or markets where customers are less satisfied or where you have a very small market share, you'll have a challenger position. That's obvious. And this really is something that translates into the talent attraction piece as well, because you will probably need to overcome perceptions rooted in your market position also when attracting talent. But however, your main story, really your heart, it needs to stay the same. And it's about really how you bring it to life that will have to differ when you talk to different groups depending on where they come from. But the heart needs to stay the same. So what we see too is that business and STEM students interested in the industry, they share many ideas about attractive work culture. And on the other hand, with innovative ethical talent more attractive to other industries such as software computer services, as we saw when we looked at the London School of Business, it will for sure be difficult to compete if these people won't join your movement. And legacy companies should capitalize on their competitive position, reputation, but also the customer promise to define the compelling stories that you can uniquely tell to ignite passion and purpose. And it's not impossible. It's really something that's there. You just need to invite talent to join your movement. And at the same time, the more transparent you can be about what you don't offer, the better. Talent will for sure value transparency, and this is something we see especially when we look at Gen Z. They really want to work in an environment where collaboration is key and where they're informed about what's happening. And busting down silos is one key challenge for many companies, and the new generation of talent will take this seriously. They really want to be good at what they do. They want to learn from others, and they appreciate a candid culture where you can have a good, honest conversation with people more senior than you. And this is not perceived for the industry in general. So it's very old-fashioned perception of culture in the banking industry overall. And both business and STEM talent realize their manager, and more importantly, their boss's boss, will really be key for the future success as long as you also do a good job. So they understand they need to do a really great job. And then after that, it's also going to be about who will be there proactively to help you with internal relationships, give you visibility that you need for a long-term career within the company. And any type of mentoring programs, official and unofficial, where more senior employees can guide young talent through the early days of a career you can offer and really talk about, will be a good proof point of a supportive culture. And for example, the management consulting firms are really good at this so-called buddy system, where you get someone to talk to and spar ideas with that's not your performance manager, more like a big sister or brother who will guide you through politics and ideas on how to bring yourself forward. So the young students out there, they really value that type of informal relationships that they can build within the bigger companies. So summing it up then, students focusing on innovation and purpose tend to be less interested in the industry. And it's sort of ironic because obviously banks and financial services companies will really need to innovate and really need to renew themselves to be able to compete in the future. At the same time, non-interested students give more attention to creativity too, and they don't really believe that they're going to get it here. So really thinking about how you can describe your culture and how you can describe the change you're going through with a clear purpose, the better it's going to work. There's such an opportunity to really build your story and be concrete about what you can offer and what you can't. That will both reinforce your appeal to interested students, but also get the attention from those who are not interested right now. So you need to have a clear story and you need to own it. Without that, it's difficult to make a difference. And to end it up then, what do you do with a clear story if you don't get it out? So the exact same things will apply in the talent space as on the consumer side. It's just a bit broader when we think about talent, as the overall brand, the perceptions, and your business success will drive the employer brand too. So the employer brand is harder to, so to say, manage and develop than the brand itself. So you really need to know your audience. If you don't know who you need, what they want, where they are, and how they interact with others, you will have a difficult time making an impact. And it's really not about pushing how great you are in their faces. It's really about educating them. What do you stand for? How can that be interesting to them personally? And our most sophisticated clients that we work with here at Universum within this space, they focus a lot on building the talent persona. They really base it on a lot of data and insights as well as behavioral information, and build real persons to understand and uncover how to approach different segments in an efficient way. And since we've looked at STEM versus business today, obviously we think that's one big differentiator because they think differently on certain things, but also their interest in the industries is on a very different level. So it's really important to think about how to reach these people. Where are they? And how can we then tell our story in a compelling way so that it sticks with them? Secondly, what we've been talking about throughout the webinar today, going back to what we discussed in the beginning, really focus on establishing a personal connection from an employee perspective, communicating your value proposition, what you stand for, where are you good, where are you not that good, and what are you aiming to improve, both as an employer and obviously as a company. Whilst going through change will be key. And as on the consumer side, listing the steps you're taking to both become a better workplace, but in particular on a strategic level. Highlight the innovations, what you want to improve, what you want to change as a company is important. As only very few people believe that banks are interested in improving people's lives, this is something you should focus on a concrete level. So how will you take the next step towards that by offering exciting opportunities to talent? What is really the main thing that you try to achieve? Obviously, you will need to stay competitive and get your revenue streams from somewhere, but how does that translate into what you build for the society too? And you want to start that inspires your current employees, excites any partner, attracts customers, engages influencers, and also finds the way into prospective talent that's not yet interested in you. And you want one that defines your vision, communicates the strategy, and really embodies the culture. And it's usually a little bit easier said than done, but it really will say who you are as a company, where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. How you believe value is created, and what you value in relationships. It will really explain why you're there and why you're unique. And it should be interesting to the right types of people that really get excited about what you're saying. And it's really not a tagline. It's really the value proposition. It's the give and the get. And our brains really think of companies and employers not as objects, but more as people. So every time someone engages with your brand, they are sort of asking you, tell me about yourself. People want to get a sense for your company as if it was a person. And human relationships will really require authenticity, who you are. And by having a shared purpose, those relationships really shifts into a dialogue. And instead of being a prospective talent, you get a co-creator. You need to invite people in and really be consistent. In today's social world, transparency will really be the key. And as on the consumer side, acting with integrity, being self-aware, being authentic, that's the only way to go. And letting your employees be authentic too and take them with you when working on the identity, on the story, on how you can be more appealing is quite important, because there will be people who are really excited about this regardless of all the change that they go through. And being consistent is also really important to actually get your message through. And as in the consumer space, to have social listening tools in the employment space is really important. We have a tool at Universum, for example, that focuses on social listening for employer brands and really maps it back to the employer value proposition so that you're able to track how your message is perceived. And having a well-communicated culture that's focused on your people is even more important within the employer branding space than it is on the overall branding side, where it's also very important. And obviously, companies that are listening to their customers will really gain a great advantage. And thus, companies that listen to their employees and prospective talent will attract the people who will drive this great advantage forward then and really make the difference for your business in the future. And to end it all with really trying to engage people. And you all know the story of Henry Ford, who once said, like, if I would listen to what consumers want, they would have told me faster horses. They didn't really look outside the box. However, on the contrary, young talent in particular will really have quite high demands. So talent needs I would actually listen to. They won't tell you they need a faster ATS. They will tell you they need an experience that will engage them. And then it's up to you how to build that. And in the new era of technology, customer engagement will be key to improve their experience. The same goes for talent. Employees, potential candidates, people who are not really even candidates yet, who are out there and could be of interest to you, they will need to get engaged with you. And if you want to build a relationship that's strategic, long-term, and not based on a call to action right now, such as an open position, you need to start building that relationship and engaging them with what you're doing. And listening, sharing information, and really improving the recruitment process is key, because that's when then people obviously enter your pipeline. And as on the consumer side, don't be afraid to acknowledge problems or things that are not working, but be sure to take steps to solve them and really let people know what's going on. And everyone appreciates companies with proactive communication. So make these people part of your story and try to come closer to them and really engage them with whatever you have to say. And this is really only possible if you invest in a dialogue with them early on, addressing their fears about why banking in terms of their employment journey, but also building on their ideas what they think is important. So our end line will really be about treat your prospective talent as your prospective customers and try to engage them as much as possible and stay true to your story if you have one. If you don't, really work on that together with your employees.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Jonna. So to wrap things up, we're going to just take a couple minutes of Q&A. It looks like a couple people have submitted questions throughout. So if you haven't done so, you can go ahead and do that now and we'll get started. One question we always get that has come in is if the slides and the recording will be available after the fact. And yes, we're going to be sending out a follow-up email to everyone that has the recording and the slides. So don't worry about that if you weren't able to get that all down. Another question is about the sort of global data. So how much variance, someone asked, are the figures about grads worldwide figures? And someone else has, how much variance is there across global markets?
Yes, so addressing those two questions that are sort of aiming for the same thing, what we presented here today is really worldwide figures. So it's based on the approximately 320 people from 25 plus markets that we compiled within this study. And to the second point, there are some quite big differences between markets, but also between the talent groups. And we just showed some of the interesting differences for particularly being interested in the industry, where we could see like huge differences between Singapore and Japan, for example, but that was just like one small part of it. So there are many big differences, and what we presented here today is just a global overview. If anyone has any requests or interest to hear more about the specific market, we will address that later on too.
Yeah, we can. You can actually even just reply to either the invite or to the follow-up message if you have any questions that don't get answered right now about specific markets or specific groups. So another question is just with respect to the sort of industry perceptions versus company perceptions, and how much difference do we see there?
Yeah, and that's also a really good question. Obviously, now we look at the industry as a whole. What we see is big differences between also how companies within the sector are perceived. So we see really big differences, and also we see companies not differentiating at all. And obviously that's really interesting when building your brand to see how is your company perception different from the industry perception, and how is it different from competitors. And also more importantly, is the perception the right one? So is it true? Is it aligned with what we actually want people to know and what people experience internally?
Great. And then another question about the career goal, slide that you shared about work-life balance being number one. So someone asked, what are some ways that banks can demonstrate or offer work-life balance?
I think work-life balance as a theme is something that we've been talking about for a long time, and that we hear everywhere. And it's really more about how you work together. And obviously talent also understands that it's not as easy in a very regulated industry to work from anywhere whenever you want. But anything that you can talk about in terms of really like everything from official policies in terms of working from home, or in terms of flexible hours, in terms of how we work together in a collaborative space, how people have possibilities to influence their workday, will for sure be something that's of key interest to the students. And then on the other hand, to also talk about the purpose again, because when people feel a purpose, the line between work and life will be clear.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jonna, and thanks to everyone who joined today. Like I mentioned, we'll be sending out a follow-up with the slides, with the recording. So please feel free to get in touch, in follow-up with any specific questions you have for Jonna. And another reminder just about the broader Future Talent Insights series. There is an accompanying ebook for this content. If you haven't read it yet, it's worth a look. You can download it on our website, and just keep checking out, your website and your inbox for the future segments as well. Thanks so much for joining, and hope you have a great rest of your day.